This is a much bigger program than I had initially anticipated. As many of you, I think I know many of you, if not most, I've been heading up the cemetery board for the last 5 years, and I learned that a lot of people don't plan, especially for this part of their life. It's either uncomfortable, whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. But families would show up and just be, what do I do now? And that's just from a cemetery standpoint. Then that kind of reached, that sort of expanded into having chats with Roshni and realizing people don't do planning of their service as well. And so then that led to, the next thing was during COVID, when you couldn't go to a funeral home. Do you remember that? You couldn't gather. There was no, well, you could, but I mean, the restrictions were so crazy that people didn't gather. And so it was almost like, where's my, see if this is working. I forgot to check. There we go. Boy, I did that poorly. Thank you, James. It was almost as if we had a situation like this. It was one step away from showing up with grandma in an urn and saying, can you help us this afternoon? So I realized that people need a lot of encouragement to do the planning, right? So that was kind of the genesis of this, and then that expanded not just to what we're doing today, which is I'm going to talk about burial. Roshni will talk about the service and planning around the funeral, and then Brian Hartfield, our guest speaker today, or one of our guest speakers, will be talking about how to work with a funeral home, because that was the other thing I realized after COVID. People were really uncomfortable. They started to get more into almost a DIY kind of approach, and then I just found that it's so much more helpful to have a funeral home working with you and guiding you through the process. So that's why. So the objective of the overall 3-part series is to inform, inspire, and motivate the parishioners to put plans in place for the inevitable. And by the way, for the next 2 sessions, if anyone has a better term than end-of-life planning, I love it. I've tried so hard to come up with something that's a little less triggering, but I can't. So be creative and help me out with the title. But at least you know what it's all about, right? So people don't plan because it's uncomfortable. I told you about that. We wanted this to be in this setting because you're amongst friends, you're comfortable, it's easier to have conversations, it's easier to sort of relax and listen and get the message, of what you need to do or what you could do. We have subject matter experts, sort of. And a key thing is this is not a be-all and end-all. This is just to start the conversation for those who haven't already started it or the thinking. Or if you've already done all your planning, this is a great way of saying, hey, you know what, I did it, oh, that one's missing. So it's a good confirmation that you're on the right path. And these are the seminars. Today is funeral, burial, and working with a funeral home. The next one is legal and financial. Then the third, and that includes planned giving. I asked Paul to do it, but he said he gave up on that 30 years ago. Paul used to do brilliant planned giving talks. And then the third seminar on April 24th will be, again, I'm not sure how to call this, but I refer to it as residential options. So you're downsizing, do you go to a condo, do you move to a retirement home, and then eventually could be long-term, or you could just stay at home and age at home, and what services are available to you, how do you do that? And pros and cons. So that's going to be more of a conversation with some suggestions and some resources available, but everyone has a different plan, so or different wishes, and that's what that third session is going to be about. And there we go. I don't know where to stick this one, but which one of the 3 seminars, but I'm going to mention it now and probably in the other 2 as well, and that is you have to have, or it's really important to have an all-you-need-to-know binder, or some call it a just-in-case binder, or Ian and Mary Cowan call it the Green Book. Friends of ours in Kitchener call it the Dead Book. whatever you want to call it. It's the book where when stuff happens, because none of us actually plans our checkout date, when stuff happens, the family needs to know where to go. And that's the all you need to know binder. So just simple, it's got personal, financial, insurance, and all this sort of, here's an example that when you turn to the binder in that go to Staples, buy the tabs, have a binder. Each tab has a different section, different topic, and some of this may be appropriate for you, some may not be, but put it in there, and including computer passwords, which is probably a big one. You'll never get them to take you off Facebook, so give up on that thought. But even personal wishes. So I'm not going to get into a lot on that, but personal wishes is you may have, you may have powers of attorney all signed up, but have you had really deep conversations with people who are going to be your POA and have them understand what your wishes are, because otherwise they're not going to know what to do. And that's a really tough conversation, but it's so important to do. But we'll get to that in the next session on legal and financial. Okay, everyone ready? So today is planning your funeral. And so I don't know if you like autocorrect as much as I do, but that just sort of struck me as painfully honest. So today we're going to have me talking about burial, we'll have Roshni talking about your service, and we'll have Brian, as I said, talking about making a plan and working with a funeral home. That's one of the things I realized early on during the pandemic, which is when I took on the cemetery role, is that I would always ask, are you working with a funeral home? And people would say, I don't think so. So they don't know. So that was why it was important to have Brian here today. So again, a little bit of cemetery humor. By the way, if you like these, I put them in there. If you don't, it was Dave Allen who sent them all to me. So a little bit of background for anyone who doesn't know. Parish started in 1825. First burial was 1827, Samuel Conover. We've buried over 1,600 people in the cemetery over the last 199 years. Unfortunately, 360 of them are MIA. We don't know if they ever had a marker, if the marker was there and lost, we're not sure. But we have really good records for about 1,300 and so. Well, we know they died, we just don't know where they're sleeping. Some people don't realize that just directly north of our cemetery, there's another cemetery. You wouldn't even know because there's no border between them anymore, but it's the Cosmopolitan Cemetery. Used to be privately owned, managed by John Spruill of St. Peter's for many, many years. And about 10, 12 years ago or so, it was basically abandoned after John died. And so that went to the city. And so now the city owns and manages the Cosmopolitan Cemetery. And quite often people will call. Gene regularly gets calls from people who are not on our records, and they say, well, I want to see my mom, or where is it, whatever. And say, well, they're in the so we look through our records and find out that they're in the Cosmopolitan. But people just see the church, they see the cemetery, and they assume it's all one. Cool. Did I do that again?
Nope.
Oh. Okay, so what do you do with the cemetery board? How do we impact your life? Well, the number one thing from a burial standpoint is you buy interment rights. And you know that you don't own a plot, you don't own that little piece of grass out there. What you own is the right to be buried in that spot. And right now, to purchase interment rights for a cremation plot, which is all we have, we don't have any more full burial casket plots available for sale there. The last one was Oscar Peterson, and I think that was in 2007 or 2006. Since then, there's no room at the inn. It's got to be a cremation plot. So $17.50 is the interment rights, and then you have to buy a granite marker so that we know you're not one of those 360 who doesn't have a marker. We know who you are and where you are. Oh. Is that not? Oh, am I going backwards?
No.
Wait. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. So, speaking of cremation, the first cremation burial we had was in 1963. Up until then, everyone was buried 6 feet down in a casket. At this point, we no longer have. We don't yet have a scattering garden, but that's in the works, and that's if you know where the garden shed is or where the Magnificard's parked. We're planning just north of that. There will be a nice little scattering garden where people, if they don't want to have interment rites and actually buried a specific plot for their family member or whatever, they will be able to have their ashes scattered in the garden. And when we get to that point, we'll have more information about that, but it's still in the planning stages. And at the moment, we have room for an additional 228 cremation plots. So you may recall, maybe 6 months ago or so, we were doing a survey on and collecting information, not a survey, but collecting information through discussion groups with parishioners about additional capacity in the cemetery, whether it was a columbarium, scattering garden, whatever. And the conclusion was we didn't want to spend a lot of money on a columbarium that people may not want to use. So we've chosen just to stick with the, yeah, you saw that already, stick with the cremation plots because we have lots of that. So I apologize, I got all out of order here. So the point about the engraved being $800 or blank is $500, some people just aren't comfortable having their name on a piece of granite on the ground until they have to go there. And we respect that. But we insist that there is some marker there because, as I'll show you in a couple of slides, the cremation gardens we have are pretty large. And if we didn't have a marker on one that was actually purchased, or on 10 or 15 of them, then it becomes really confusing as to where we would sell the next plot and where we would dig. So you have to buy a marker, but understand that if you do go for a blank marker, then it's going to be engraved after the burial, and it's significantly more expensive to have that engraving done at the site compared to at the shop where the stone is created. So there's an example. These are all real examples of a blank, and then someone just wanted their last name, but they didn't want any more engraving than that. Or you can go right up to everything but what I call your best before date, right? So it's your choice. Kind of like this one. There are a few teachers in the crowd.
That's cute.
Maybe not English teachers, I'm not sure. Anyhow. Okay.
So Tom, just a question.
Yes.
Marker per person or a marker can be for two people?
One good question. One marker for two people. Each cremation plot, which is, and I think I speak to this later, it's 2 feet by 2 feet. That includes the 16 by 10 marker. And then that plot can accommodate 2 urns. So it's one plot for 2 people, or 2 people's remains, or up to 2 people's remains. And that marker has to have any and all information for whoever is down below.
But it's $17.50 per person.
No, it's $17.50 for the plot.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, $17.50 for the plot. And the marker is either 500 or 800. It's blank or engraved. And then the only other fee is the interment or the burial fee. So every time we open or close the grave, it's the cost, which is currently $500, to open and then put it back and then fix up the grass or whatever after the fact. So that's it. So there's the interment fee, the marker fee. And that's when you buy the rights, and then at the time of burial, there's a fee at that time. Yes.
Just say that the interment fee is a 2-for-1 bargain.
Buy one, get one? So, thank you, two for.
Tom,
Yes.
I'm out there.
No, you're here.
I'm
Doug's
here,
out there.
but Doug's out
Yeah,
there,
okay.
right, and it's all engraved and everything, there's a space for me, so.
Yes.
So is it $500 more for me to get my name on that stone and I guess my dates?
Partly right. $500 for when your time comes and we
Yes.
have to open the grave to put your urn in.
Okay.
So that's the 500, or whatever the cost is at that time, because
Okay.
hopefully you'll be,
Inflation.
yeah, inflation. Not on you, but on, no. But then the cost of the extra engraving
Yes,
will be, your family will take care of that, and that's an extra cost on top.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just,
Good. Yes, Ken?
Ken, I know you took over from me. And one of the biggest questions I got, can it be prepaid?
Great. So generally speaking, we try not to because our systems really aren't, it's really hard for us to do a prepaid. If we know that, for example, if someone's mother dies in November, December and is cremated, but we can't do burials until we can dig the ground, which is usually April, we know it's imminent, then we can, it's okay to prepay it at that point. But to prepay it 20 years in advance, or even 10 or whatever, we don't have the bookkeeping system to do that properly, and I would be really worried. In fact, lucky that there was one person who had prepaid. Her last name was Mintz, and we just buried her last year, so I was able to strike off that, remember, that, she didn't have to pay when she goes. Okay, all right. So then, this is sometimes working, sometimes doesn't. There we go. Just talked about the interment fee, we covered that. And capacity for 2 urns. Okay, perfect. Let's keep going. And it can contain, so it can contain up to 2, but those 2 people, it's just a cemetery bylaw. Those 2 people have to be a couple or related, right? So, so that you and your best friend aren't in a grave together. It's you or you and your spouse, your significant other, whatever you want to call it.
So you said related, that could be a child.
Good point. So typically, no. So forget about that. I said related. I apologize. Thank you. No, it's
Have to be a couple.
have to be a couple. Yeah. Otherwise, it just gets too complicated. There we go. All right. Here are the cremation gardens. You may know where they are. The top red circle is the old original St. Peter's Memorial. The one over here in the middle is the Oaks. Memorial is filled. Although there are some extra spots we may be able to fill in there. And then the Oaks is the one that we are currently using. This is problematic. Thank you, James. So there's a picture at the bottom of the St. Peter's Memorial, and there's a map above it. Everything is sold. Generally speaking, what we do is we have an X where there is an urn buried, and I'm not sure if this one's up to date or not, and in general, if you have a couple, a male and a female, the male goes on the left, as you're looking at the marker, and the female on the right. That may sound crazy, but if you're dealing with someone like a generation later, the grass, or even 5 years, the grass is completely recovered. You don't know who's where. And you don't want to go digging and hit the person that's the urn of the person who's already in. So we just have a standard that male on the left, female on the right. And if it's a same-sex couple, then we just ask ahead of time and we make a marker. We make a mark here.
What is the yellow for in there?
Yeah, good question. The yellow is, although it looks like a nice even spacing, in fact, if you look at the picture here, you can see that there's actually little avenues, little extra spaces that if we need, we could start to put cremation plots in there. Thanks for the question, Pat. And thanks, I don't know why this isn't working. And here's what the Oaks is. And you probably all know where it is, but if you look, you see there's a bench in the photo, and right behind the bench is a 10-foot trunk. That's that big old oak that we had to take down a couple of years ago. And you can see all the stones that are there now. And the map above, what we have is the gray is sold, committed. The yellow is sold, but we don't have names on there. The people just wanted a blank marker. And then the green is what's available. So if you came to me today and said, I want to buy a plot, then you would have choice of any of those green ones. And simply because we always want to sell one that's adjacent to something that's already there. Otherwise, it becomes quite a checkerboard that's hard to manage. Right, so how do you do it? How you purchase a plot? Very simple. If you're a current parishioner, which you all are, there's no question, yes, you can buy one. If there is some further consideration, if the person has been a previous parishioner. And that's where it goes to the cemetery board for discussion, because we don't have unlimited space. And so we have to consider, if you're a parishioner who's no longer here, but you were for 30 years, but you moved away 2 years ago, that's very different than a person who was a parishioner 30 years ago for 2 years, if you understand what I'm saying. So we have to kind of triage those, but that's what the cemetery board's for. Then the other thing is, I don't think does anyone here have ancestors who are buried out back? Well, you do, but it's not the same. Yeah. your mom and dad are out there, Allison, but
I'm thinking 100 years ago.
yeah, but it's a good point. My point of these is, if it's a burial plot where a casket's 6 feet down, then descendants can be buried in a cremation plot above that. And we just put another little marker, and it's great use of space. It's good for us. It's good for the family reunification, whatever you want to call it. So it's a win-win-win. But in Allison's case, her mom and dad are in the Oaks garden with a cremation plot, and there's no room in the cremation plot. There's only room for your mom and dad's urns. There's no room for yours or anyone else's. You understand what I mean? So it's only if it's a full burial plot that you can add additional cremation plots. And there's a little bit of...
Thomas, there's no maintenance fee, like there's no, like...
That's a great question. Yes, that there is, or Elizabeth, that there, with the 1750 and with the purchase and the cost, the total cost for the interment rights and the marker, 40% of that goes into perpetual care fund. And that's what, that plus other things is what keeps the cemetery maintained. It's quite expensive to have all that grass cut every year and trees cut down and whatever, but yeah, that's.
Did you ask, are there taxes on the cemetery plot? Like, yeah, I didn't know.
No.
I've never asked that.
Yeah, and by the way, those the dollar amounts I gave you are HST included, so that's the total amount to purchase. Okay, let's go on. The process is simple. I already got ahead of myself. You ask us, if you want a plot, ask us for permission. Once approved, choose the spot, one of those green spots I showed you on the Oaks map. Then Jean will create, so once we have your money, or a promise of the money, the promise of the money, and you've chosen your plot, I ask Jean to create the paperwork, which is a contract between the cemetery and you. Then we meet to sign the paperwork, and we give you a copy. A copy goes in the records in the office, and you're all set to go. Then you just have to make sure it goes into your just in case book, or whatever I called it before, and then your family knows where to go.
So, sorry, I'm confused. Earlier you said that you can't make payment in advance.
Mm-hmm.
But this is payment for the rights and the stone, or the marker.
Rights, thank you for asking, because I obviously wasn't clear. To get interment rights, you must pay up front. What you cannot pay in advance is the burial fee, the
Yeah, because that
O-
was
opening and closing.
Okay, yeah.
Alrighty, good to have you here. By the way, I get questions like this all day long, so yes, James.
For the marker, do we deal with the cemetery board or do we deal with the marker company?
Thank you. These are, I should have asked you guys for these questions ahead of time. We just take payment for it, and then once we have signed the papers and everything's good, I will connect you directly with Creative Memorials, and you can deal with them. They know the size, they know their capability. Some people want to put way too much information and it doesn't engrave properly. So we put you directly in contact with Creative Memorials, and they only get paid when I know that you're satisfied. Okay? Yes? No
And
question.
the second thing is, when we buy the spot in the marker,
Yep.
we're required to give them a very nice little booklet from the Bereavement Authority of Ontario.
Yes, when you buy, thank you, James. When you buy, although they'll find out when they buy their rights. Because we are a commercial cemetery, we have to follow the rules of the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, because there's no such thing as too much government involvement. It's because some people have been, over the years, have not been kind to grieving families, and that's why these rules are created. But we have to give you a brochure. It gives all kinds of information in there about your rights, and anyway, if insomnia is your problem, this is the book for you. But it gives you all the information you need that the government feels is appropriate. Thank you, James.
And, sorry, just because you had mentioned Creative Memorials,
Yes.
can you explain why Creative Memorials?
Yes. So Creative Memorials is by far the most flexible, their service level is fantastic. They are really good to work with, and certainly better than any of the others that I've worked with over the last 5 years. And so you're free to get. You have to buy a 16 by 10 by 4-inch granite marker, berry gray steel. You have to buy a certain type of marker, and you can get that engraved anywhere you want. But I was going to tell you, the price is better at Creative, the service is better at Creative. Why would you want to do anything other than that? But you're free to if you want to. They're in Milton. Most of what you do will be virtual. It will be on by email, back and forth. But they're fabulous. We used to hand out a sheet with 6 or 8 different companies on there. Everyone I dealt with that wasn't Creative was a nightmare, and including casket outlet. So it's like the Walmart. Anyway, it's a nightmare, and I don't want our parishioners to go through that. So you're free to, but I would highly recommend you work with Creative. Okay. Thank you for the questions. So the other thing, I'm running a little over, but what we do a couple of weeks before the actual burial, just so you know the process, I will send out an email to the family with a whole bunch of questions asking, number 1, are you dealing with a funeral director? If you are, that makes things so much easier for me selfishly and for you. But I need to know that. If you're not, then a whole bunch of stuff we have to ask, or I found it's helpful to ask. What size an urn? A lot of people, as I used to think that this thing that looks like a lampshade.
No, not a shade, the base.
Yeah, sorry, the base of a lamp. I used to think that's what an urn was. I'd say we've probably buried more people in boxes, which is also called an urn. So it's a little confusing, but anyway, I asked for the dimensions. Why? Because it's really helpful to dig a hole that's large enough for the urn to go in. Ask me how I know. Then Then I will also say to the family, remind them to bring the death certificate, the cremation certificate. Well, let me go back. How did I? Are you? No? Are you
Nope.
there? No? Little gremlins in here. Oh, no, anyway, other questions? Yeah. Again, so please bring the death certificate, cremation certificate, and payment. It's really good to get paid. Because, yeah, it is. Who will lower the urn into the grave? Do you want us to do it? Do you want a family member to do it? Do you want a little pile of soil beside the grave? Some people like to, I'm quite surprised. A lot of people like to put a shovel full of, or a trowel full of soil in themselves, and then one by one the family members will do that. I mean, so we just learned, because again, we were in a DIY mode. We were doing all these things that normally a funeral home would consider. So I still send out those questions, especially if I know they're not dealing with a funeral home. Will the family stay while the grave is filled in? Put flowers in, all kinds of questions we ask ahead of time to make sure that it's the kind of service that the family is, that will bring them comfort. Okay, and then will it be a church service followed by interment directly, church service only, or a graveside just like this? Here's a perfect example, and that's what we would do at a typical graveside service. Is, you can see beside Roshni there's a little metal table. That's what the urn would sit on. We have the service, and usually Roshni, it's 20 minutes or less. It's pretty quick at the graveside per se. And then you can see down right by Roshni's feet in front of her, there's a little green AstroTurf rectangle that's covering up the grave during the service. And we will pull that away at the time in the service, and we'll place the urn down in the grave. And then you can see there's a little pile of soil with the fluorescent green trowel. That's what people use. So that just gives you a picture of what it typically would look like.
Tom, are you the one that's digging the hole when you because is that, who does that?
We have a fellow by the name of Peter Smith. He's he's actually, anyway, a young guy. And he does all of our and if it's, we still do some full burial. We can't sell any more full burial or casket plots, but we still have some available where people are still alive, but they have interment rights for that. And we have another guy dig those because that requires heavy machinery. But the cremation graves are done by Peter, and then filled back in. Yeah, this is probably the most inappropriate of all my slides, but anyway.
It's my favorite one so far.
What's that?
It's my favorite one so far.
Thanks, Sue.
Yeah, we do this on, we do family payment.
So that's it for me. I ran a bit over time, I apologize, but we do have 2 hours, so I planned on 20 or 30 minutes for each of the presentations. We can handle some questions right now, or if you've scripted something down you want to ask later, whatever works for you.
Can I just ask about flowers or right away, or are you allowed to have flowers, or can the vase be placed there later, or?
You mean at the burial per se?
Yeah, during the
Or afterward even.
Yeah, during during the process, and then later on, can people, some places don't allow certain things, and I don't think we have a lot of stuff sitting around there, but are you allowed? I saw some bulbs poking up when I walked around the other day.
Yeah.
What?
I don't know who planted those bulbs, but thank you. Whenever that was done, those daffodils just keep coming up every year. During the I think really, as long as it's not crazy and out of the norm, Elizabeth, families can do whatever they wish. What I would say I see most often is if there's been a service in the church and then directly out to the grave, some will take those flowers that they may have had on display during the funeral and then bring those out to the grave for the graveside committal. If it's only a graveside service, nothing in the church, then I've seen most often people will bring a dozen flowers or enough for the people that they think will be at the funeral, and they will hand those out. And then one by one at the end of the service, after Roshni is finished, then they will put the flowers in the grave, and then that just gets
Is
fit.
there a little cremation hole?
Yep, the hole is usually about, well, the plot is 24 by 24. And so roughly 12 inches by 15 inches is the size of the hole that Peter digs. And then so during the service is when the urn goes down, and then people can put flowers, or some have left little notes, or, what's that?
Just like with a casket.
Just like with a casket, you can put something in if you wish, and then Peter fills it all. And sometimes, if people like, when I tell them that the deer will come early in the morning and eat the flowers, then they will leave the flowers out on or beside the grave, and then within a day or two, they're gone, because the deer eat them.
I think part of Elizabeth's question too was, I've heard you talk about there are specific metal vases that if you bring flowers
Yes.
after the fact.
Yeah, so we have, right out there outside of that wall, there's a brown plastic bin, and in there are plastic vases with a spike on the bottom. People can use those to put fresh cut flowers in all throughout the season. So we only ask that maybe a week or two after you've put them out there, come back, get rid of the flowers, and put the vase back in the bin. But glass is not permitted, metal is not permitted, because when the guys are going around with their grass cutting, they become projectiles very quickly, and it's not safe. So I'm going to cut it here. I'm going to hand it over to Roshni, and we'll keep going. But if you have a question, yes.
No candles.
Yeah, no candles. Yeah. And I'm sorry, that's the other thing you get when you buy your interment rights. You get a really great 8-page detailed list of bylaws from the cemetery, things you can and cannot do. And
That's what he thinks I look.
thank you.
Hello, everybody. Do you need to stretch? Do you need to move? You're good? Great. All right, and hello, everybody online as well. So my part of today is about the services, is about working with clergy, and what the different types of services look like. And I will tell you first, every family is different. If someone comes in and says, I want, the traditional, the usual, I don't. I've never done a funeral that is the same for every family. And we do work with people who have never planned a thing for the services before their loved ones died, and we do that. But the point of this session is for your loved ones not to have to do that, for you to have some input there. So the goal of this workshop is to avoid that, and mostly to avoid that because when people are grieving, grief comes out in all kinds of ways after death. And when plans for services and things like this are done ahead of time, it is just helpful in what is already a very difficult times. I have had families in my office arguing about what is going to be served at the reception, what sandwiches would mom want, are we cutting them diagonally, are we cutting them in a straight line? They're not arguing about sandwiches. There's so much happening that it's helpful when plans are made ahead of time as people move through their grief in whatever way that is. And also sometimes your loved ones who are planning these services, they don't go to church. And for you, if they're trying to plan a service for you who do and are used to certain things, it's a lot of pressure for them. What hymns did they like? What prayers, what readings did they want said? That's a lot of pressure for someone who might not know anything about church life. And so they want to honor you, but they don't know how to in that way. And that makes it a lot harder sometimes. So it's really helpful if you can have some of what you want laid out for everyone to know. Also, part of working with me is when we call it pastoral care. When you or someone you know is in a really hard time, they might be sick, they might be in the hospital, there might be various reasons why they need a visit from a clergy or a member of the pastoral care team, always, always, always tell me. You might think, oh, Roshni definitely knows about that. Assume Roshni never knows. I would rather be told someone needs a visit 10 times than to not be told at all. Because sometimes that's really hard when people think I know, and I'm very sorry that I don't know. So always tell me. I really appreciate that. As Tom mentioned a bit, there are different kinds of ways to have services. So one of the things that we do is we have a funeral service here in the church, upstairs. Sometimes we have funeral services in a funeral home. I'll go to a funeral home, and some families prefer there. I've never really done it outside of those two places, but so we have a service there. Sometimes following the funeral service, whether it's here, whether it's at a funeral home, is the interment, the burial. So we move from the service straight out to where the burial will be. Sometimes we don't do that because that part, the family wants to happen later, or it's happening very far away. So we don't always do that right after. Sometimes there is no service in the church. I'll let you know when I'm changing slides. I don't have a lot of slides. Sometimes there is no service in the church or in a funeral home. Sometimes it's just at the graveside, which is like the picture you saw earlier. And you know that can be a little different because there's no organ outside if you want organ music. For the most part, people are standing. So I would say those tend to be a little bit smaller. But not always. It's like sometimes we've had like 30, 40 people out there. And the graveside services do tend to be a bit shorter. The prayers are different that we use there. So the graveside service, depending if you have people speaking there, you're probably looking around 15 to 20 minutes time-wise. In the church service, they're technically can be as long as your heart desires with hymns and prayers and speakers and things like that, but they're usually between half an hour to an hour depending on if you choose to have communion at those services or not. So those are just the different types, and sometimes it's a combination of a variety of them, okay? So now we're going to go through the next slide. Perfect. This is a handout for those in person you have. Those on Zoom you can see here, but I do always have copies available the next time you're in church, or if you want me to send it to you, just send me a note. This is a planning sheet that we use. It is a planning sheet I inherited. I think I changed a couple of things here, but it's mostly the same. And people use this to note down what they do want in the service. And this is, usually people fill this out if they want a church service, not something just at the graveside. They want something in the church building. This is what they're filling out. You can fill out as much or as little of this as you like. But what happens is when you fill this out, and we're gonna walk through it and talk through it right now, when it is complete, you bring it in. I go through it with you to make sure I can read all your writing and everything you've written down. And then I keep a copy here. I keep a hard copy in my locked filing cabinet, and you take a copy home and you keep it in your green whatever binder that you have. Okay, so there's 2 copies. It doesn't mean whatever you fill out has to stay that way forever. A great example for this, Bill Kibblewhite, I had like 9 of these on file for him. He was changing his all the time for different reasons. Sometimes, you hear a hymn and you're like, no, that's the one I want in my service. So you go back to this form and you change it. Or, sometimes people will note down certain people they want involved. They might die before you. And then people go back and change this. This is a living document. You can change it as much times as you like, but I always keep all of your copies on hand here. So we're going to go through this now. So the top is where you fill out your name, current address, your phone number, your next of kin. So if you have died, I cannot reach you, so who do I call? So usually that is, you can put the name of your partner, your name of child, the name of a close friend. Who is it that I should be in contact with when this happens? Because at the church, we have your contact details. Unless your child is here as well and all the information is updated, we don't have any contact for any of your friends or family. So this is where you note that down here. If you are working with a funeral home, funeral director, do you want a visitation at the funeral home? It's the yes or no. It doesn't need to be, I have organized this. Maybe you have. But what do you want? Do you want a visitation at a funeral home? Do you want a visitation here at St. Peter's? Are you being cremated? Memorial gifts. So sometimes in the bulletin, if people are making donations, sometimes if this section is filled out, it can say, you can make a memorial gift donation to this organization, St. Peter's, Erindale. It can be whatever you want it to be, but we like to note that ahead of time. Or maybe you don't want that in there at all, and then you just note that. Order of service. So, I take the funeral service, we use our prayer books. So either BAS, 9:15, or the BCP, 8 o'clock and 11. Okay, so your services will come from either of those two prayer books. Sometimes, you can choose whichever one you want. Sometimes, if you come to 11 o'clock, you think, that's the one I want. I want it to be a BCP service. I want it to be what you know. Sometimes I've had people who were, wholeheartedly 11 o'clockers or 8 o'clockers. They want a BAS service because the language is more contemporary, a little less these and thous perhaps, and the people who are coming to the service, they think will resonate more with that. You can make that choice however way you want, but those are some things people think about there. So, readings. What readings do you want read at your service? Psalms, and if you look at the next piece of paper in your handout, and we'll go to a second in the slideshow, these are examples of readings that are used in funeral liturgies. You can go through any of these and choose them. These are commonly read, or you might have something else that's meaningful to you. That's fine. A very common one, the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd. Those are really meaningful to people. So you can look through these and decide what readings that you might want. And when you're noting down readings you might want, if you have a reader in mind, if it's really important to you that so-and-so reads a lesson, write that down. Then the next part, eulogy. If someone is going to speak, who are they? Write those names down. Sometimes that's really hard for family members to decide if you don't provide any direction, because a lot of people might want to speak. But if they know so-and-so wanted this person, easy decision for them. And there's always other less formal moments where people can share their memories of you as well. Music. What music do you want? Hymns. What hymns would you like played? List it all. I always tell people list it all. And then we will make work what you have in there. It doesn't need to be just organ music. I have had, I don't know if all churches do this, but if someone says, there's this, what we call a secular song that I really want played, we play it off a speaker. Family brings in a speaker and, we play it off a speaker. Sometimes my grandson plays the violin beautifully. I'd love for him to play. Write that down. Although one time, someone wrote that they wanted their grandchild to play something, and that grandchild did not play that instrument. So they said, we won't be doing that. But write down what you want, what music you want, what music is meaningful to you. Middle, where will that burial take place? Do you own a plot at St. Peter's? If you know the plot number, note that in. own one somewhere else, just note that down, and any additional details. If it's important to you that your reception sandwiches be cut diagonally, write that down. I'll tell the family. But some people do write down reception thoughts, like some people say, I want a reception in the church. Some people say, I'd like people to gather at so-and-so restaurant. Note all of that down. I will not promise you that all of it happens the exact way you want it. That never happens in life. But it's really important for your family to know. We learned in school that while funerals honor those who have died, they're for the living. They're for the living to grieve, to pray for each other, to pray for you. So it's really important to have all these thoughts here. And then your loved ones will think through, what did you want? What makes practical sense for the situation they might be in? And what might be meaningful for them to add in too? And unless you say, I really don't want that on this sheet, I do take into account what your families and your loved ones say in those moments too. I think that's really important. So fill this sheet out and then we talk through it. That's basically how it works. And so this is for those online, these are the examples of readings. They come from the BAS. But again, you can take readings out of there. If you want something secular, like a poem or a part in a book, we do that too. So note all of that down. We always read at least one piece of scripture, but we can include other things as well that might be meaningful to you. And the next one, I don't know if I'm doing it or James is doing it, but I'm grateful for whoever's doing it. For those in the building, I thought of it last minute, so it's only here for you, but there is the fees for the service attached, and I will send that to any online who are looking for it too. So basically, if you're having a church service here, the use of the church is we have a suggested donation. It's not really a fee for the space, so if you'd like to make a donation, they're noted there. If you are using the hall for a reception, that fee is noted there. You're responsible for setup, cleanup. Sometimes people bring in caterers. Sometimes it's a potluck. Sometimes families will set out their own food. It's really done all kinds of ways. There's different fees there for different people that might be involved. But we talk through all those fees. I talk through that with your family. This is also something that cannot be prepaid. We don't do that because we don't know what it will look like when the time actually comes, but I provide that to people as well. So that is outlines of the service. Questions? Elizabeth?
What is a verger?
A verger. A verger is someone, if I need some assistance with the service, maybe that is you want communion. I can't serve the bread and the wine at the same time. Or sometimes, the service might be on a Saturday and I might need to leave. I won't leave midway through the service, but I might need to leave before the reception's over. So I bring someone in to open and close the building. So a verger's not always needed. So that's part of the reason why things can't be prepaid. I don't know what I'll need yet. James.
There was a question, was there a slide about these church costs?
I don't, because I didn't scan it. That's my fault. But if you send me an email, whoever might have asked that, I can send you the cost ahead of time for you to look through. My apologies. Any other questions? Yes.
Just a statement, like you said some things in your format or your form to fill out. One of the things that you said about the readings, you don't have here is people to read. You might want to add in there is people to do the readings.
Yeah.
Okay, along that. And then you said about the eulogy, you said a friend or family. In other cases, I've seen the priest actually do.
So here's a surprise.
Oh.
I will always preach at your funeral whether you really want me to or not, unless it says, Rajni, do not preach, but right now I haven't seen that so far. But sometimes it does say, so the eulogy is different from what I'd call like the sermon. A eulogy, people do lots of different things. Sometimes they talk about your life history, sometimes they share their memories. With the sermon, what I really try to do is tie in some of the readings that we hear. Why are we here? What does it mean that we are here? from our faith.
Yeah.
Sometimes what people do, right, is, if they have someone in mind they want to preach, any other clergy as well, you can always note that down. I will always check with them if I can find them. So if you put a contact detail, if you know it, that's even better. I will always try. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But at a minimum, sometimes, people like to know that you were thought of for this, even if it doesn't pan out that way. It's really meaningful to know.
Okay, so I kind of just come in and just, or do you want the priest to do it versus having somebody else?
Different priests do different things. I love welcoming clergy here and inviting them to do that. But again, some clergy, they can't for whatever reason that is. So I always say, put down all your wishes here. I'm not offended at all. Put all your wishes here, and we will do whatever we can do to make as much of that happen for you.
And just the last question is, certain funerals we've had here,
Speak a little louder.
oh, sorry, in certain funerals we had, there's been choir.
Yeah.
What about the choir? Like, I don't, no fees for choir on here. I know she didn't put that in.
Now they might negotiate with me, but, so yeah, sometimes I have found particularly when the person who has died was a choir member, sometimes the choir will sing. You can always note that down if that's something you want. It is, so what happens then, if you've noted you want a choir or you want a piece that is sung by a choir, I will go to the choir director and say, this was in the wishes, can you check who's able to come? Because it's a volunteer choir. And so whoever is able to come will come, and if they have enough voices to sing what you want, then that happens. We have had times where handbell choir played because that was important to that family. So different things can happen. So note down what you want, and if it comes to you in the middle of the night later, I wish I would have wrote this down, you can still write it down later and add to it. Any other questions right now? James?
From the online, we had requests to send all of this material to the online people too.
Perfect.
So we'll do that.
Yes, I sent a scan already, but I will add the scan of the expense sheet. That's not there yet. And actually, I'll take a picture of all the people.
I did.
You did? Great. We know all the people who are online. Any other questions right now? Or you know how to find me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roshni. Everyone okay so far? And thanks for getting us back on schedule. I ran over, you ran under, it's all good. I appreciate that. So you heard from Roshni and you heard from me the question, are you working with a funeral home? And that's really important because we find that everything tends to go smoother if you have a funeral home involved. To what extent you want that to be, that's up to you and your loved ones, but we find it works really well. And so, the format of today has been, it's been totally backwards. Let's get you buried, then let's have a service, and now we're gonna have someone come up to talk about how to work with a funeral home. What do they do? What don't they do? How can they help you? And so to that end, we've got Brian Hartfield, who is the Director of Advanced Planning or Pre-Planning, or the guy you talk to before you can't talk anymore. No, he's one of the things I can tell you, and we do maybe 15, maximum of 20 burials a year here. I can tell you, anytime I know that there's a funeral home involved and it's Turner and Porter, I just that's great. I don't have to worry anymore because they know us, we know them, it works really, really well. So again, I don't, like creative memorials, you can deal with whoever you wish. I'm just telling you, from our experience, Turner and Porter's, especially the new chapel down here on Dundas, they're very, very good to work with. So let me just make sure that the slides are advancing here properly. And no, they're not. So James, you're going to get called upon to, okay. So with that, please welcome Brian Hartfield.
Well, I'm speaking.
Thank you. Oh, perfect. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Just while Tom's doing that, I just want to commend Tom and Reverend Roshni for hosting something like this. You may or may not know how much time and effort this takes to put together. I know just from preparing my portion what it takes, never mind all the other material that they've put together. And in my time at Turner and Porter, this is probably the third time I've been able to speak here, which is always nice to be welcomed back. But I would say that St. Peter's leadership team has always been ahead of most churches that we see as far as providing seminars and information to their members, trying to educate and be organized. And we often use St. Peter's resource that Roshni spoke about to many other churches, because most churches don't have such a thing for their members. So there are many times that we're seeing families that, like Reverend Roshni said, that the people that we're dealing with aren't the people who are members of the church, and what we're being asked to do may be dramatically different than what the member would have wanted. So we certainly think these tools and resources that they provide are tremendously helpful for members that are a part of the church and community. So well done. I just want to honor the leadership and Roshni and Tom for doing this. So just formally, good morning to everyone who's attended in person and online. Just want to thank you both for being here. It's really encouraging to see so many people take time out of their day to attend something like this. Today we're going to be talking about planning ahead, not just practically, but as an act of care, faith, and love for the people in our lives. So I have met some of you before over different times, but for many of you I haven't met. Just a little bit about myself. My name is Brian Hartfield. My primary roles, mostly as a husband to my wife Heather for 24 years, father of 3 children. My son Jack is 19 at university. My son Luke is 18, grade 12, and then my daughter Mila is in grade 10. She's 16. I've been a person of faith throughout my life, an employee of Turner and Porter for 20 years, and a lover of all things hockey. So anyone must have, not so much the Leafs at the moment. It's a very sensitive issue. I actually, not before, but this year, yes. I've changed, so they are fun to watch. A licensed funeral director for 28 years. As I do this, I'm starting to remember. I'm saying things now that I remember my dad saying, and so I know I'm getting older. Just turned 50 on Monday, so that was a milestone. I've been working in funeral homes for 34 years, so ever since I was 16, I've been talking to Kim, cutting grass, cleaning toilets, washing cars. I've advanced since then, but that's how it all started. This is an interesting statistic I found, is that looking back at my years, I've assisted what I think is about 4,000 people complete their funeral, cremation, burial plans. So in addition to that, I also have helped over years plan funerals and visitations and attend services, so all aspects of funeral service. But I do enjoy this aspect, and this is I think this number is helpful because you're not the only crazy people doing this. So lots of people do this, and in order for 4,000 people roughly to complete their arrangements, I likely have met with 3 to 4 times that many people just to talk about it. Because, often people aren't going to complete the arrangement, they just want to find out more, or how does it work, or all sorts of reasons. But over probably 15 to 20,000 people I've interacted with why this is helpful. You can go ahead, James, is it? So what does a local, and that was nice of you to say, Tom, about Turner and Porter, but I'm just going to speak about what local funeral homes provide. Fortunately, most funeral homes are good operations, good people, so what I'm speaking about is not specific necessarily to Turner and Porter. We do these things, but probably most funeral homes offer the same kind of resources. So what does a funeral home offer? They offer, they're usually an active part of the local community. They're usually local businesses. There's a physical building. You likely know Turner and Porter, here Ontario, Dundas Street, Scott's, Glen Oaks, Simple Alternative, There was Lee Funeral Home, Streetsville, Skinner, Middlebrook, Port Credit, so lots of funeral home choices in Mississauga. But you could actually drive to their location, park in their parking lot, go into their building, talk to their staff. If your family member has been transferred, they're at that building, so you know where your loved one is. Staff usually live in the community, they serve in the community, they support the community. If you're calling after hours, they have contacts 24 hours with the hospitals, retirement homes, hospices, so you have a tremendous resource with their network. Behind the scenes, they have contacts with cemeteries, crematories, options, availability, and prices. So it was interesting hearing Tom speak about Cosmopolitan and Erindale, and whenever we talk about some of the cemetery options, not necessarily for people that are St. Peter's members, but there's, you say Erindale, Cosmopolitan, the one beside the church, well, yes, but that's not theirs, so don't call them, call the city. And so we can often be a resource of what cemeteries are available. Some people don't know of all the options, Spring Creek, Glen Oaks, St. John Dixie, there's all sorts. And then we don't get into what's available and the prices, but we have an idea of prices, so we can be a resource to say, here's some idea, but you got to speak to the actual places to find out what those options are and prices. We liaison daily or weekly with local churches, whether it's the secretaries at the offices, we usually know them by name, and especially the clergy, we know the uniquenesses of each church and each clergy, and no smelly lilies at St. Peter's, that sort of thing. So, and a number of their support teams. So, I've probably spoken to Tom, I don't know how many times over the past 10 years or so in different capacities. So it's just nice to know that there's a network of support. An important item is a confirmation of authority. Funeral homes have to take direction from next of kin or executors of power of attorney. Sometimes we see people misuse these terminologies and they don't really understand. They think they're saying it right, but they're not the right authorities in some cases. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Awareness of funeral homes are aware of potential benefits. Some families know this, many don't, that there's Canada Pension, death benefits, survivor benefits. They know of resources for social services for some clients, veterans benefits, life insurances, pension plans, bereavement resources. So what we think of it is a funeral home can be like an all-in-one, I thought of like a death concierge, if you will, or bereavement care services. So even though, yes, they offer caskets, urns, and facilities and vehicles, but they have this whole awareness of all sorts of things. So, and even when Tom said about creative memorials, we get asked, do you do headstone? No, we don't. Who do you recommend? Creative memorials. There used to be a place in Streetsville and in Port Credit, but these places don't really exist anymore. And so, but we also would say something similar to Tom about creative memorials. So,
Excuse me, is that also where you get urns?
I don't know if they offer urns.
I don't know, just.
I'm not sure
Like
if they do.
urns are at Turner Porter, right?
We do, yeah.
Okay, but not the markers.
Yeah, no, so, but meaning, good question, but meaning that often we get these questions and we may not be the one to supply, but we can say, here, talk to these people because we have experience. So, thanks, James. So what happens when someone dies? I want to begin with something very simple because many people have never actually walked through this before. Maybe just if you're comfortable with a show of hands, how many of you have been the person who may have got the call or had to be the one in charge of making arrangements? So maybe about half almost. And so if you're comfortable, maybe in your own words, what was that like? Was it very difficult, easy, stressful, emotional? These are common things that we would hear. It was not too bad for whatever the reason. Tom?
I personally found it a little disorienting. I mean, we were dealing with my parents, we were dealing with a funeral home, and so they were, it was out of town, but they were very helpful with saying, okay, here's the next thing and here's the next thing. But at the same time, I didn't know what the full picture looked like. I just kind of knew one step at a time. It would be, I just thought it would be helpful to understand the whole process up front. Just because you're going through all the grief and you don't need to be led step by step. You kind of want to know what the whole journey is going to look like because it is quite complex.
And as part of that with Tom's parents and my parents, because they had done a lot of planning and we had that roadmap of what their wishes were, that took a lot of stress off of the situations. Yeah.
I'm finding that using an executor with a bank is a problem.
And we can,
They never get back to you, you don't know where you're at,
yeah.
and I would never do that myself.
And we could maybe touch on that afterwards, and it may come up in the next seminar as well. And there certainly are pros and cons, and you are right. And in some cases, they can be tremendously helpful and not. But every situation is slightly different. Yes, go ahead.
My parents were ahead of the ball. They planned 10 years before they died.
Wow, amazing.
Amazing. And it was really well with Blue Ducks. And they sat us down and said, this is what we've done, and we want you two to be power of attorney for medical.
Yeah.
And you two to be power of attorney for all the financial legal. Are you okay with this? Everyone was okay. And they even chose the caskets and the whole lot. When the time came,
what an example.
my lovely father said, no, I think we'll go up one level.
Oh, dear.
Casket. So it was a smooth pine box.
Yeah. There you go. So, and they were much ahead because they, maybe back then it wasn't as spoken about, and they didn't have seminars on this sort of thing.
No,
so well done.
It was, and honestly, as you say, the funeral home just walked us through it all. But we'd known for many years that this was what was planned, even down to the flowers. And all we had to do was organize the service and the reception.
Well, in each of those scenarios, this will sound familiar to you, that when someone dies, whether it's at a house, a hospital, or in a care facility, one of the first things that has to be done is a doctor or a coroner has to come and pronounce a death. We get this call often that someone's dying at home, and do we just call you? Well, no, or maybe someone's older and they're not dying at home, but it wouldn't be unusual if they died in their sleep or something. Can you just come? They have a plan in place. No, we gotta have a doctor pronounce a death, even at the hospital. And that's the starting point of everything that follows.
I think, Brian, also, when a coroner gets involved or somebody dies out of the province or wherever, or on vacation or out of the country, that's a whole different complication.
Yeah.
It has to be managed, and the funeral home slips up to it, but it, adds a whole bunch of complexity that wasn't planned.
If we're having coffee after, maybe that's something, if we don't think of, you can bring back up, and there's some. Right now, I think we'll talk about kind of the basics, but yes, that's like 3.0 is.
Just a quick point, if I could ask everyone to speak up, because for the people online, the microphone is actually connected to either Brian or the little camera that James has. So if you're sitting back here and you're quiet, all they hear is mumbling, and then they hear an answer. So speak up would be helpful for people online. Thanks.
James.
I've got a question here from Helen Baxter online.
It wasn't actually a question. You were asking about experiences, and both my mom in particular had her service and funeral arrangements pre-planned. And so I came into Neweduk and had everything. The funeral director at the time said, okay, well, we need to take you into the casket and the room. And I said, no, thank you. And he said, no, we need to take you in there. And I said, what my mom has stated. So there's actually a reason. And it's just that a lot of people, they're grieving, their emotions are all over the place. I did go in. because he said, you know, you see the person when they've perhaps passed. And then, you know, the next stage would to go in and see the different caskets is the next stage, where you actually see the person in the casket and the real finality. And very appreciative of that. So thank you. And then with my
Okay.
Maybe we can come back
it was
to
a different sort of situation when I had to, in that he was some different caskets because he wanted to know about the handles and whether they were lead. It's going to be, and he didn't want, you know, any of the toxins to go into the air.
Helen, we're
Other than,
happy
you
to
know,
bet.
the pine boxes, actually, you know, to anyway, okay, yeah, bye.
I mean, it's always a bit nervous when you ask people a question because you never know what they're going to say. But a lot of your experience leads into our next slide, which is, what if there is a plan in place?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just about the very first point. Supposing your loved one dies at home, passes away in their sleep. So what do I do? Do I phone my doctor's office? Do I phone 911? What do I do?
That's often what people do, just as a default. Even, you know, a death has occurred, you check. Oh, okay, you almost naturally call 911, right?
Okay.
So, in other cases, if someone has chosen to die at home, they're terminal. There's a different process we can talk about. But if it's
Yes.
just, you know, a death that occurs in 911, and then the coroner would come and pronounce the death, and then they would just tell you whether to call funeral home. And so in the emotion of it all, and that's what we're going to speak about, is people have to make rush decisions on who you're going to call, what you're going to do. So not only are you dealing with the emotion of it all, but in this case, okay, the doctor decides there's nothing suspicious here, natural death, calls, and you're like, well, who do I call, potentially? So if there's a plan in place, it's very smooth because you know who to call. In other cases, we'll talk about what can happen. But yes, in some cases, if someone's died at home, coroner comes, if they think there's something more they want to look into, and usually it has to do with age and medical history, they would take the body to the hospital and do what they have to do. But if it's looks natural, heart issues, they would probably just claim the hospital. All right. I'm going to get over my time, Tom, but it's not my fault.
Is it possible to sort of bring the question
Take
down?
the question out loud so we'll know what you're responding to.
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Her question.
Repeat the question after
Oh, I
I say
see.
it so people can hear.
So, her question, and that's a good point. We don't do these presentations very often, so this is out of our comfort zone. We're usually just one-on-one with families, so thank you for
Oh, so they're training you to.
Yeah, they don't teach you this at funeral school.
But the question was, if a loved one dies,
At home.
at home,
Who do you call?
who do you call?
Your family
The simple answer
doctor.
is 911. Just say, my spouse has died, and then they will send the coroner. Right?
Yeah.
Or a doctor or whatever. But
And if by default someone has had a death in the family and it's pre-planned and it's not unusual to them, they might call us because they know the plan, call the funeral home, and we would say, has a doctor been? No, they haven't. Okay, you have to call 911, or we can call the local police and say, call the coroner. It's not an emergency, but someone has to come and pronounce the death. Yeah. So what if there is a plan in place? Of those that you had held up your hand, half of you or so had plans in place, and that's very positive, or can be an easier process than when there isn't. Someone calls the funeral home, as we've said, and from that point on, the funeral home takes responsibility of the care of the body. So they're kind of the chain of custody of the loved one throughout that process. The wishes are already documented, as you've said. Decisions don't have to be made right in that moment. The body is transferred and people have time to gather, be with the family, talk about it, think about it. And all that can bring a tremendous sense of peace during a very difficult time. But what if there is no plan? So things can feel overwhelming very quickly. Families are often asked to make a choice on who to call right away. It could be at the hospital, could be at a retirement home, long-term care, it could be in the house. Sometimes this is with very little information, so families aren't prepared emotionally or even practically speaking, and now they're trying to decide who to call. Another important factor is that person who's calling the right authorities. So not just anyone can call and have someone picked up. Go back to who has the proper authority. Has to be established. Not just anyone can say, come and pick up so-and-so. If there's a will, the executor is the authority. If there is no will, then the government dictates who's in charge. It could be a spouse, it could be common law, which sometimes can be interesting. Otherwise, it's children, and it's not oldest to youngest, even though that might be the hierarchy within the family. They all have equal say according to the government. Could be grandchildren, depending on who's surviving, and then it goes to parents and siblings. So, again, all of this can be add stress and emotion at a difficult time if someone doesn't have a will, doesn't name who's in charge. And then there's real life challenges. Do the family even get along? You know, that's not uncommon that people don't all agree on all issues, never mind these issues. Are they in different cities? Often people are all over the place now, so can they be accessible, or can they travel easily if that's necessary? All of this can just add additional stress and complexity to an already emotional time. And that's why many people end up working with whichever funeral home is contacted, just in the emotion of it all. So what does a funeral home do? So we take possession of the person into our care, we handle documentation, support families through these decisions, and coordinate whatever the services are. We also provide original proof of death certificates, usually 8 to 10 or a dozen. These are needed for things like banks, insurance companies, CRA, canceling government cards. We talk to families about the benefits that are available, such as Canada Pension Death Benefit and Survivor Benefit. We can also assist with notifying different agencies, such as updating accounts that the person's name is on, canceling credit cards, working through insurances, pensions. We have digital resources that can help families notify places, or we can also meet with a family and they can pay for the service to have someone do those things for you. There's still things that an executor or next of kin has to do, and they typically are asset-based. So we or a digital tool can't settle bank accounts, debit cards, investments, properties, vehicle ownership. So those places, they always have a few extra hoops and things that you have to go through to transfer assets. All of this, though, is we walk alongside a family and during one of their most difficult times in their life, and this is often where families tell us that dealing with a funeral home sets it apart. So behind the scenes, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, funeral homes are available. So when we get a call or a funeral home gets a call, deceased is brought into their care, where we guide the family to finalize the wishes, complete paperwork, permits, costs. When someone's brought into our care, we have to itemize everything they come into our care with. So a couple of scenarios. Someone's died at a hospital, they're wearing a hospital gown, and say the family has said the person wanted to be cremated and nothing else. So we would have to just tell them, this is what we brought them into our care with, a hospital gown. Would you like us to cremate them in the hospital gown? Yes, that's perfect. Great. Check. No, of course not. That's a terrible idea. Here's their favorite pajamas. great, lovely, bring them in, bring them to you. Or say someone has died at a residence, long-term care, or their home, and they're wearing their pajamas or whatever they're wearing at the time. People aren't thinking of these things, so we have to itemize all of that, whether it's valuables or not, right down to the socks and shoes they might have been wearing. And we have to just say, do you want those returned, washed and cleaned and returned? Do you want them disposed of? Do you want them, in this case, cremated with the person? And they give direction. Sometimes if a family's going to have some private time before the cremation, maybe a son, a daughter, or a grandchild wants 10 minutes to say goodbye if they didn't have that time. Do you want them to see the person in their hospital gown? No, that's a terrible idea. Great, provide some clothing. Or yes, that's perfect, that's great. So it doesn't really matter to us what is done, it's just we have to walk them through those steps of what's involved. And if a family's going to have either an open or closed casket, if that was their wish, usually they're bringing in some type of clothing to provide for that. If a family doesn't require any preparation or embalming, sometimes if they're going to have some private time before a casket's closed or before a cremation or burial, they might want the person washed and dressed, their hair combed, maybe their eyes closed. These are common things that just people don't think of, but if they are going to have time with their loved one, they need to know we need to know what they are expecting when they have that time.
Can I just say something here? It was a long time, 50 years ago my mom died, and I was young, I was 22. When she was buried, it was an open casket. She had her hair done, but it was a style we had never seen her in before, so I learned from that to provide the funeral home with a picture. Like that's how we do that in the future, just a semblance of how they looked before.
Well, this is nervous because I'm going to say it wasn't us, but usually we do say we ask for a couple of photos, so not one when they were 30 years ago, but a current likeness of hairstyle and so on.
Yeah, no, that would have helped me.
Doesn't matter for me so much. There's nothing going to change on this head, but I think go ahead, James.
Okay.
So behind the scenes, after we've talked to the family about what they want us to do or not do with their loved one, we do have to register the death with the city, and that goes along with the death certificate that the doctor or coroner has provided. That permit, once the city hall stamps it, just like a registration of birth or a marriage, they register a death, that goes to the provincial offices in Thunder Bay. That permit that they issue has to go to the crematory or cemetery. So Tom spoke about that with burials, that's needed for a burial. You can't just cremate or bury people without permits, legally anyway. At the crematory, in this case, if someone's choosing cremation, the individual is received when we bring them by the crematory staff. They receive the paperwork and permits. There's a metal identification tag attached to the cremation box or container that the body is transported in. And that tag is kept with the body. The cremator remains throughout the process. Typically with cremation, there's a 24 to 48 hour period. And it really is just when people have a death that want cremation, that's their only cremation, but it's not the crematory's only cremation. So often people have to wait their turn depending on how busy it is. Each cremation is one at a time, of course, and it's 2 to 3 hours per person, so there's only so many per day. Families do have the option, if they want to request for an additional fee at the crematory, to schedule their cremation if they, for some reason, didn't want to wait their turn. Or in some cases, people not only want to have it scheduled, but they actually want to go with us to the crematory and witness the start of the cremation. And for some cultures, that's important. Traditionally, for Anglicans, that was more often. The priest would go and do the committal at the crematory with the family. Nowadays, not everyone wants to do that. So all these details are coordinated by the funeral home: permits, timing, logistics, so families don't have to navigate it on their own. So logistics for casket burial, Tom spoke a lot about this with specifically St. Peter's. Cremation, that could be quite a bit different, he spoke of. Although 95% of burials at St. Peter's are in urnment of cremated remains, some casket burials can be completed with added details that he touched on. There are no longer any burial plots for sale at St. Peter's, just cremation plots, but parishioners have the rights to be buried in an existing family plot where there is sufficient room for another casket. So we spoke of that.
Open question?
Thank you.
How long can the family hold the urn and the ashes before burial?
No limit.
Yeah. As long as they want.
Brian, you want to repeat the question because I'm sure that
I'm sorry. So the question was, how long can you hold the urn after cremation? And the answer is as long as you want. We have people who come in with grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad that nobody ever did anything with them, and then it just often can be someone else's problem if nothing gets done. But if there's a reason, like Tom was saying, cremation has occurred in the winter, and there's going to be a lot of cemeteries won't do urn burials in the winter, so they're all done in the spring, so that's an example. But if it's a family's request that, half the time a death occurs and there's no plan in place, at least half the time. And so people are just try their best to get through the process, and then the cremation, we don't know they never said what to do with the urn or the ashes, so, well, we don't want them either, so here you go. And then, there's never a good day to figure out after what to do, so naturally it sometimes just gets delayed until someone decides. So, yeah.
I mean, it's a seasonal issue. The ground's frozen. Will the home hold the urn until then?
For sure. So we usually ask the family what they're comfortable with. Some people, if their loved one, they prefer to hold on to them until that time. And then we would walk through the steps of dealing with the cemetery, how that can look, like Tom described. Or some don't want to do that and ask if we can, and of course we'll do that if we know there's a final place in mind. So good question. Yeah. And I just have a little bit more, Tom, but I want to be aware of timing. If you want me to continue, I can, or do you want me to about 10 more minutes?
Continue on for a
Okay.
little bit more.
So now you can see hopefully why planning ahead matters. It reduces the burden on family, it ensures wishes are known, and avoids any rushed decisions. Planning ahead is really a gift for the people that you leave behind and love. Now that we've looked at hopefully the why people pre-plan, now we can look at maybe the practical elements of this one. You can go ahead. The practical elements of what that looks like. So when you're dealing with a funeral home, what should take place. So I call this the 3 steps to pre-planning. There's no cost to do it's free. The hardest part is just talking about it. But when I meet with someone, we just answer questions they have. We complete file information, so I show them what we record on file. We give them a folder which complements Reverend Roshni's document if they're members of St. Peter's, so it all kind of goes hand in hand. So that they have a folder, we have a folder. If they're not here and I'm not here, everyone still knows what the discussion was. I think everyone I speak to, the first thing they ask is how much does all this stuff cost? That's always on their mind. And so I'm going to show you in a moment, we give them an estimate of commonly selected cremation packages, or when I say burial funeral packages, it's not the graves or the real estate, it's just everything up to that. And same with the cremation, it's everything up to what's going to be done with the ashes. And so without having to make every single decision, and for those of you who had your hand up that had to do this, there's a whole series of decisions. Some are required, some are optional. Even the things that are optional, there's price ranges for different products and services. So without having to make all those decisions in a pre-plan, we can tell someone, here's roughly the price range of what that might look like. Often some families get past that stage into step 3 where they have itemized what they do or don't want, and we can prepare an exact estimate based on their request. Go ahead. One more. So this is an example of our folder on my right. The family is the gray folder, so they have that to keep at home and we have ours. If they ever have to update their address, their executor, their next of kin, they can just call, provide name, we can pull the file, update it, very simple. But if someone had to call in the middle of the night, one of the first things we ask after who we're speaking to and who we're speaking about is there a plan in place? And if there is, we just pull the file and we don't have to ask the next dozen questions or so, kind of like what Tom said with the cemetery. And then the family has a folder too, so no one's guessing what has to happen. Go ahead. So I won't go through this in detail now, but I do have these available afterwards on the questionnaire I'll leave for you. So anything that you want more on, I'll provide. But this is an example of commonly selected burial packages, ranging from I just want to get to the cemetery, no public or private events before. I'm simplifying it for time, but or we want to, members of St. Peter's, we want to have the service at the church with the casket or at the funeral home, and we want it all kind of on one day. There's specific reasons why sometimes that's requested, but it's all taking place on one day. Burial to follow, variety of options and choices. I'll talk about it in the next slide in a moment. And then sometimes the traditional packages where people have a couple of hours for family or friends to come, pay their respects, see the family, and then maybe the service is at the church or the chapel on the following day. So again, the price ranges without someone having to pick out their carnations or their tea sandwiches, but it's all, here's roughly what that might look like. And we highlight what things, you have input in. So if you have a budget or, things you want to stay within, we can highlight how you can accomplish that. Go ahead. And the same kind of what we call silos of cremation packages. And these aren't hard packages. Things could be added to or subtracted from. But it's just trying to show people very quickly, especially if they've never had experience, what some of these things might cost. And so price ranges for no events, just the minimum requirements maybe for planning for cremation, or maybe after the cremation some type of an event like visitation with the urn, or people to come and pay their respects, see the family, or maybe traditionally it would be at the church, as Roshni and Tom have said, where the urn is present. Maybe people gather just before, or maybe there's something where the casket is present, opened or closed, maybe rented for visiting or service, and then cremation is occurring after. So there's all different packages and options, and when we speak to family, we take a bit more time to go through those, but it gives people a rough idea of costs without having to make every single decision. Go ahead. So we did say on those silos, there's choices of caskets, rental caskets, urns, vaults, depending on burial, cremation, picture boards, video slideshow, live stream, flowers, catering, keepsake cards, jewelry. Go ahead. And some of these things is very easy. You might say, yes, no, of course I don't want that, of course I want that. So everyone's a bit different with some of these things. The administrative details that we have family contact and arrangements, the service scheduling, the coordination, whether some of these things apply like visiting, reception. Newspaper notification was traditional, so some people want that. Others just want the online memorial. Some don't want any notification. They want it very private and confidential. And so once we've gone through those 3 steps, people, sometimes come in, how much does it cost and how do I pay? Well, we get to those things, but in our mind, those are kind of the last things. Let's just talk about it first, get a plan in place, it's free, and then here's the budget, here's the cost. Does that meet your needs? Now let's talk about payment options. So we did say you don't have to pay anything, you could pay later at the time when it happens. But for people who do want to prepay, which is probably the majority who do want to meet and plan, they assume they want to prepay. Money is held in a trust account, so it's usually a GIC, group annuity, government regulated, CDIC insured or Assurus, so very protected, safe and secure. So funeral homes don't recommend people to prepay so they can redecorate or put a new roof on. It's secured in the client's name. But the price is guaranteed. So most people want to save money on their expenses. So one way to save money is to pay at today's rate. Or the other way to save was to pay 20 years ago when that price would have been tremendous. So unfortunately, prices aren't going to go down in the future. They don't go up a lot each year, but every year, a little bit, it all adds up. Not only is the price set at today's rate, usually people who are pre-planning haven't had a death, no one's emotional, hopefully no one's sick. They just tend to make better financial decisions. And people pre-planning for themselves typically tend to spend their money better than someone else. And we see this even with the average price of a pre-planned arrangement typically is a little bit less than when families have a death arrangement. In our pre-planning file, we record who the next of kin executors are. So if, say, it's children, we put transferable here because we tell people, this is for this season of your life. And this season of your life might be your whole rest of your life, or sometimes as people get older, the more care they need, sometimes they have to relocate closer to family. So sometimes they move closer to a son in Ottawa or a daughter in Kitchener. So even though they may not be thinking of, we would highlight that if their life changed, they're never out any money, they could relocate their plan and their fund to wherever they go, especially in Canada. So we see this often, people transfer in because their kids live here and they were in the smaller towns and now they're close to hospitals and with their kids and they transfer their plan in, and sometimes it's the opposite. So mainly it's just that no one's out any money. And it can be modified. So this season of your life, much like a will, this is what I want, but if 20 years go by and something needs to change, and I had this happen this week where a lady planned 20 years ago, now she's in her mid-90s, she wanted to take the reception off because she's outlived a lot of the people that would have come. So she canceled the reception expenses and got the refund back for something, not only the money, but the growth on the funds as well. So all this is just highlighting that these are protected consumer benefits or important features. Go ahead. And then the last thing we talk about is payment options. So most people want to pay in full if they have that ability. That's easy. Put it away, forget about it. It's off your mind. That's the best way. Sometimes people want to pay a deposit of any amount, and the deposit is just to open their account. It's not for me or Turner and Porter. It's just to open their trust account, and then they usually might pay the balance off within the year. So sometimes money's coming due, they're rearranging things, selling something, and then they just call and tell us to take it off the balance. Some people want to pay on monthly payment plans. It could be 12 monthly payments, and that could be for people who might have the ability to pay in full, but maybe they can keep that money doing other things like investing or travel or retirement, but they can pay $200 a month, $500, whatever their budget might be. So it just gives people the flexibility, whereas when a death occurs, it's really everything is up front. Go ahead. And on that one, you're okay there, but we don't highlight it, but there are multi-year payment plans. We don't really promote those, but we have them. Our belief is that, this topic is hard enough to begin with to talk about, never mind be reminded of it every month for the next 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 years. So we have those, but we don't encourage them. We usually try to make sure that's the best plan for the client, if that's what they're asking. So I'll skip this. We talked a little bit about this. Those are all the details that would be listed on the next slide. So on the contract, so once we get to step 3 in an itemized quote, those terms that were on there are all on here, and what's included or not included is all detailed. Family has a copy, we have a copy, so again, there's no guessing what was going to be provided. Go ahead. The client receives a confirmation letter, the trust certificate, the records are securely held at the funeral home virtually, digitally, as well as in a fireproof cabinet, so it's very secure. And it provides reassurance to and clarity for family. Often we get calls, someone's misplaced something, can you send us new copies? People's health and mind change. That's an example of the wallet cards on the left, so people get a couple of those to give to their family. This is what I've done, the file's in the drawer. Here, if anything happens years from now, just take out this card and call. That's an example of the trust certificate, so it's all documented. You get a copy of that so that the funds are invested in the client's name or set aside for this purpose in the client's name. This is helpful in Streetsville. A few years ago, Lee Funeral Home no longer existed, and now Skinner and Middlebrook and Port Credit, but over, I think, about 100 clients in each place. Nobody lost money just because of these protections in place, so just reassures people that, they hand over the money, it's not gone, it's still in their name. Go ahead. And then maybe I'll finish with this during question and answer. But This is a plan that we offer, and we'll talk about it after. Yeah. You okay? Yeah, so we cover a death within Toronto to Hamilton area hospitals is quite often, or residences, so that GTA area is what funeral home covers. Sometimes people die away from home, visiting family, going on vacation. Reverend Kibbleweight was a familiar experience. I don't think he had a plan at the time, but this plan is offered through funeral homes to have coverage for someone if they died away from home. So you pay a one-time fee of $525. It covers you for the rest of your life, anywhere in the world. If that happened, the family just calls the funeral provider that they're dealing with, and this is a separate company, and they deal with reputable funeral homes all around the world. There's no health or age restrictions, so if it did happen, the family's not doing all the work, paying all the expenses, come home and submit a claim. It's just a phone call. This company does all the work. They deal with reputable funeral homes. If it's international, embassy, consulate, airfare, they do all that for families, and they pay.
What company is that?
It's called Guaranteed Travel Assistance Plan. And so if a person was traveling with someone, a companion, they would also pay for that person to come back with the body. So usually there's interruption, they have to stay longer or come back sooner than planned, so they would pay those fees. Or if someone was traveling alone, they would pay to have someone go out to where the body is to pack the suitcase and come back. The family can request for the body to be brought back because they want to be buried or maybe cremated, but the family want to say goodbye before cremation. Or maybe they say, no, the person wanted cremation, just cremate them there. The plan will pay for either of those scenarios. So it's really the family directing what they want done, but the work and the expense is taken care of by the plan. The reason I don't think Reverend Kibbleweight, no one plans on dying away from home, of course, but his took longer than we would have liked, and we were trying to help his family on behalf of the family, but even we couldn't get it done any faster because we don't have the same contact. And especially in other cultures, they don't care who we are. Every culture is different, especially Caribbean and other, there's not North American, not regulated, corruption and all sorts of stuff. So some places just don't care who we are.
So this plan still makes a difference? Don't they not care about this plan?
Well, they have the network of, international, they know who the reputable ones are or aren't. And so, we don't know who every place is in every city in every country. But that's their only business, and so they're the ones responsible for doing that.
So this is not just for international travel. This, like I have family 12 hours away.
I should have said that too. We have people who take this out that have cottages in Peterborough, Muskoka, and they spend half the year there. And so if that happened, this would cover those additional mileage fees to bring them back. So definitely if anyone's 2 or 3 hours away or more, and you can drive to get them, those fees would be paid for by them. But if it's out of province, out of country, then it's even better because now they're dealing with other funeral homes. So if it's a place you can drive to, we don't usually involve other funeral homes, but there's mileage charges. If it's a place you can't drive to, then other funeral homes are involved.
Great. Brian, a question. Where is it that, or do you have to, if your body or the person's passing away has a pacemaker, has titania, has implants, whatever, where is that disclosed to? Is that to the coroner? Is that to the funeral home if you're going to have cremation?
Yeah, it's the funeral home's liable, so the coroner doesn't care.
Okay.
But with every cremation, it has to be asked, and we can tell with every body, has to be disclosed. And if a pacemaker is there, it has to be removed. It's close to the surface, it's removed. It gets recycled or sent back to the manufacturers. But with cremation, no batteries, no alcohol, all that, nothing explosive.
Like if you have a titanium hip or something like that to be able to.
So anything like that just melts and it's removed after cremation with a magnet, but anything explosive has to be removed. No batteries, no alcohol. Good. Thank you for having us.
So, thank you very, very much, Brian. So, as you can tell from that last from Brian's presentation, there are so many variables. There's so much to consider. If there was ever a question in your mind, I hope it's put to bed. Do the planning. Go through the details, whether it's the burial, the service, working with the funeral home. There's a lot of stuff that it really helps your family to do that kind of planning ahead of time. So what I'm going to ask is, on the people online, if you could just let me know, is there anything, these presentations I think, is it okay, Brian, if we make these available to people as a PDF?
Yeah.
So if you'd like to see the presentation to be able to review it, in addition to all the notes that you've been, I'm sure, scribbling down, please let us know in the comments section, and then we will make sure that, or just you in the room here, let us know if you'd like a copy, and we'll get you a copy of the presentation. Just a couple of help. Oh, one thing I asked Roshni, and she does, whenever possible, attend a cremation. So she gets notified of when the cremation is going to happen, and she will be there.
And that's at the request of the family. Like some families are there and some are not at the actual time of cremation. Some want it to just be a family time, but if they ever want the priest there, we go to that.
Thank you.